Wait. Or you can go up, but just
Okay.
give me one sec.
You want to sit back?
I don't think, yeah, I'm serious. They could not make something more buggy than teens.
Really making me upset lately. It's trying to correct my grammar when my grammar is not incorrect. No, it's like spelling correction.
What day is it today?
Come on, please. Drum roll.
Close enough, yeah. And by the way, have you guys seen Garfield back there? Have you seen Garfield?
That was nice.
Yes. I just noticed. I'm growing rugs as we speak. They're all planted. Hope this little early frost didn't do anything to them.
Yeah.
Where we at here? I used to have my notebook. All right, you may begin.
Okay, so just to recap, the Sodders, the parents were immigrants. They came over. They had 10 children. On Christmas Eve, their house burned down, and presumably the 5 children burned alive. And so this is the next day, Christmas Day. So there was an over hour-long search after the fire department arrived, but they couldn't find any human remains. So there were theories that maybe the fire had cremated them. There were ashes. A police inspector came by and said that he suspected that the fire was a result of faulty wiring. However, later this would be kind of iffy because the wiring for their electric stove was brand new. They had just bought it, and so the wiring was fine. That couldn't be it. And later after this, the police would withdraw their statement. And I couldn't find any information about what else they thought started the fire. It was just that one hypothesis. So Mr. Sodder ended up burying the remnants of the house, like the basement, in 5 feet of dirt, intending to transform it into a memorial. If you think about it, they didn't have any bodies to have a funeral for. So this was his way of memorializing and grieving. And later they would actually plant flowers over it. Before New Year's, the coroner had already printed out, issued their death certificates, saying their cause of death either suffocation or fire. But the Sodders started to wonder if their children were truly dead after all. So they're suspicions. Wrong slide. It's okay though. So Marion, the eldest daughter, the one who had given her toys to the children to play with, went on record saying that she hadn't smelled any burning flesh at the fire, nor when she was watching the windows of the upstairs window on the 2nd floor, she didn't see any of the children's faces being pressed up against them or like trying to get out. Mrs. Sodder, in her grief, started running experiments. They had a wood burning stove, and after meals she would feed like pork bones, beef bones, chicken bones, cover them in wood, and set them on fire, and see, after all the wood had burned down, what was left. Every time, there were still bones. The bones remained. And after reading a story about a similar 3-story house burning down with 7 people inside, how the people there had still found all the remains, the bodies, including like an infant, so she became certain that her children didn't die in the fire, but instead were kidnapped. And they started remembering strange occurrences, like the fact that a few months before the fire, there was a stranger that came by asking for like hauling work. And he walked around to the back of the house and he pointed at it was like, what is it? A device thing at the back of the house. And he said, that's gonna start a fire someday.
Was it like a gas meter, electric meter?
I think it's on here. So yeah, there's 2 fuse boxes.
Oh, fuse box.
So they're 2 separate fuse boxes. It's like that's gonna start a fire someday. Which could be anything. The next story was a little bit more suspicious. So again, not long before the fire, like a few months later, another man came. This was a insurance salesman. The Mr. Sauter, for I think it was life insurance. He had life insurance. Like, and what's interesting about this man was after some investigation started happening, they learned that he was a former employee of actually, wait, that's next slide. Anyway, he started threatening, so the insurance salesman started threatening Mr. Sauter, and he said, like, this house is gonna go up in smoke. And next, there were, they had a story of, like, just before the fire, like, kind of the weeks, like, before, like, winter break, there was a story of a man in a car, like, intently watching the 5 children as they went back from school. Moreover, there you go. They started thinking like the faulty wiring. Okay. They started thinking more about the faulty wiring. So it's like, wait, if something was really wrong with the wiring, if it was the wiring that blew up and caused the fire, the power would have been out. But during the fire, the lights were on, so it couldn't have been the wiring. Moreover, there had a repairman come and inspect the telephone line. He said the telephone line wasn't burned, it was cut. Next, there was a man spotted walking away from the scene with a block and tackle box, which can be used for removing car engines. It's theorized, could that be why the coal trucks didn't start that day? It wasn't the cold, it was because their engines were missing. Finally, there was a bus driver who said that as he was driving by, he had saw balls of fire being thrown onto the roof. After that, 3 different witnesses. One claimed to have seen the Sauter children alive and well after the fire. The first was a woman who claimed she had seen them driving in a car and had seen them from a car window. The next was a woman who said she had served them at their diner. They were surrounded by people, like hostile Italians, essentially. Sorry, June. Sorry. Anyway, and the last was a hotel bellhop or like checker-in person, who said she had checked them into a hotel and that the people they were with wouldn't let her speak to them. So the Sauters tried over and over to write to the FBI, the Department of Justice, like asking them to investigate this case. But over and over, they said the case seemed too localized for them, and they did not. So instead, Sauters turned to a private investigator. And so this is a newspaper clipping of Mr. Sauter saying that he doesn't believe that the remnants, the body remnants found at the site of the fire is his children. They're still alive. Which leads us into this slide, the investigations. So later they learned that the insurance guy was on the coroner's jury who had like said that the kids died of fire, nothing else. So that was suspicious. And also he was a former employee of Mr. Sauter, and that he had co-signed on the home insurance, which he had raised to $200, he had added $200 onto their family's home insurance without the Sauters' knowledge or consent, which would be about $36,000 today. Yes. Moreover, there was rumors, obviously not rumors because there was a newspaper clipping that we saw on the previous slide, that the fire chief had found a box of human remains on the site of the house fire that day. And which the Solders like went up, dug up all the dirt, found a box with meat and like burnt meat inside. It wasn't charred or anything though. And they sent it to the Smithsonian Museum to have it analyzed. And it turns out it was beef liver. So not human. And there were rumors after that the fire chief had buried the box with the beef liver after the fire to try and like assuage like the grieving Solders, like saying like, here, look, proof, your children died. Which is just awful. And also later, baby Sylvia, who was 3 years old, was playing near the old side of the Solder house, and she had found this like strange contraption, which resembled a empty napalm, like what they called pineapple bomb, which could have been the thump that Miss Solder heard when she tried to try and fall asleep, that rubber thump on the roof. And also would explain the bus driver's testimony of seeing like balls of fire being thrown onto the Solders' roof. Next, they actually found the ladder, which was always in the same spot, but wasn't that night. They found it 75 feet away in an embankment, which is essentially like a ditch. Who knows how that could have gotten there? And this is the missing persons poster that the parents put out. So like, there's Louis, there's Maurice, there's Betty, Martha, so on and so forth. So the leads. After they put out, so Mr. Solder in a newspaper saw a photo of a bunch of like Manhattan school children, and he thought that one of them looked a lot like Betty, and so he drove all the way to Manhattan and like tried like to talk to her, but the girl's parents wouldn't let him. And after that night, and then after that, they got a DC pathologist to excavate the site of the burned Solder house, and they found like little fragments of vertebrae, which they sent from the Smithsonian. And it was concluded that they couldn't have been from the children's bodies, and that more likely than not, they were part of the dirt that Mr. Solder had hauled into the site and covered it with, not from the fire. There were 2 hearings in the 1950s trying to reopen the case, still closed. And then in kind of the knoll near their house, the Solders put up a huge billboard, offering $5,000 and later $10,000 reward for anyone with any information that could lead to covering one or all of their children. And after that, calls started coming in. Mr. Solder traveled across the U.S., sometimes down in Mexico, investigating leads. The closest lead they found was a photo from Kentucky that came with a letter. And this is a photo. It's claiming to be their son, Louis. For Solders, they thought this was the most convincing. Like, they thought maybe this could be their son. But they were so worried about why he was staying hidden that they feared for his safety. And so they didn't publish the place where the letter had come from, in case that would put this man in danger and cause him to flee again. But they did publish the letter, and they did replace Louis' photo on the billboard with this man's photo. Also, and like they just spent thousands of dollars trying to find these kids from 1945 all the way into their deaths. So just thinking like today, how much money that must have been, like how that must have impacted how they lived, the children going to school, their grandchildren going to school. And grief just hung over this house. The trail goes forward. Mr. Slaughter confessed that the idea of his children being out there, like, kept him up at night. Mrs. Sauter had worn black ever since the fire, and she did so until the day she died. Um, Sauter died in 1969, so 20-ish years, 30 years after the fire. And then later, Mrs. Sauter died, and the billboard was taken down. That's a picture of the billboard. You can see the $10,000 reward in all the photos. With Mr. Sauter and Mrs. Sauter. You see Mrs. Sauter is dressed in black. After that, after Mr. Sauter died, Mrs. Sauter started renovating their homes. Smithsonian Magazine described it as adding rooms, like barriers between herself and the outside world. She put a fence around their property. And then finally, Sylvia. So, little baby who was 3 years old at the fire in 1945. She finally died in 2021. And so to this day, this family has no closure. So, theories. So one of the big theories that the family had was the idea that their children were taken by the Italian mafia, and that the fire was Mr. Sauter had never talked about his past in Italy or why he came to the United States in the first place. So it was very easy to theorize about. And also, Mr. Sauter was very outspoken against Mussolini in 1945. And so it was thought that maybe this was an act of revenge to try and silence him, and that the fire was actually a cover-up for trying to steal the children. However, even Mr. Sauter pointed out he couldn't figure out why they wouldn't just come from directly, like why steal his children. And then there are other theories that came up more recently about maybe why they couldn't find any bodies. In 2005, there was an article done in the NPR that said maybe it was a misleading bird time. Like one of the thoughts was, like they say that the fire burned until 45 minutes and there was ashes. However, far more likely than not, it was going on from 1 a.m. all the way to 8 o'clock. There was a raging inferno. Maybe that would have been enough to cremate the bodies. The other idea is the idea of a cremation oven that was created by the oil barrels that were in the garage, and the fact that Mr. Sauter throwing dirt on it, maybe that created an oven that made it so hot that it like accelerated the cremation process of the bones. That's another picture of the billboard. That was $5,000. So my thoughts. At the time, it's very curious. So, and there's a lot of misleading information, like the fact that in the 1945 newspaper, it said that Mrs. Sauter was the one who sprinted to the neighbor's house and rang up the phone. But other accounts, it said it was Mary. People also, there's conflicting information about the order of events. Like, did Mr. Sauter ran out to the ice bucket, run back inside, and then decide to jump out the window and cut off his arm? Or did he jump out the window first, cut off his arm, and then go to the ice bucket, and then go inside? It's all very confusing. And also the idea of Marion grabbing Sylvia and then running out of the house when she was asleep in the living room. She would have just ran out. And Mrs. Sauter was in the room that Sylvia's crib was in. It's a lot of confusing events. And over the years, over the decades, this is almost made of a 100-year-old case. It's more confusing. And also, if Mrs. Sauter was on the ground floor, and if a napalm bomb was thrown onto the roof, how did she hear it? And if it was really thrown on the roof and that's where the fire started, why is she the first one who smelled smoke? Is everyone just dead cold? Maybe. And there are other potentialities, like why Marion didn't see them at the window. Maybe they were trapped by falling debris. Anyway, so it's really hard to say. And also, there's the fact, like, why didn't if they were really, really alive, why after over 50 years, all the way until Sylvia's 50 years, did they not ever try and contact their family? I mean, sure, that could have been Louis. Maybe they tried, but it's just really hard to add up. And also, why the Italian mafia would want the children in the first place? Wouldn't it be enough to just burn down the house? Wouldn't that have sent a big enough message? So it's very confusing. I think the idea that they burned in the house, and also like how verifiable are those testimonies saying they saw the children after the fire? Because if those are real, those are accurate, then yeah, it's a very compelling case. They didn't die in the fire. But what if they aren't? And it's been so long at this point, anyone involved with the case that could be able to tell us and be able to get the information out is long since passed. And so we may never know. But based on everything I've read, everything I shared today, I do think that I do think it makes more sense for the fire to be an act of arson. However, it's such a grief tangled case that's really hard to see. Everything is murky. And that's a skeleton in the military song, which is kind of gruesome, but
Yeah.
we're excited. So that is the site of the slaughterhouse as of 2005. There's nothing there. It's just a random corner of a house that is new on a brand new distribution of property, a tree. There was nothing left to investigate.
So there's a new house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, not on the site, but on the corner of it. So it's like
Sure.
this driveway, essentially. So, yeah. And the family, still, like Sylvia's daughter, like it is still believed within the family that that went missing. And it's really hard, especially when you consider that Sylvia, the baby, essentially grew up as an only child, surrounded by this grief. Because her 5 older siblings that were still living in the house were gone. All the siblings left were already adults having their own lives. Yeah. So that's sort of slaughter children. I have no idea what happened.
It's a good story. I know someone who actually saw the bill. Any questions? All right, nice job. Thank you. Good, very good. Even though I gotta admit the tree slop was a little gruesome. All right. I think we need medieval manuscripts now. Nice job. All right, give me one sec.
I have the mouse. I know, I'm so high maintenance. All right, so my project is on the Voynich manuscript. So the Voynich manuscript is a collection of 209 pages, but there were probably more at one point. It was radiocarbon dated from 1404 to 1438. That's when they think it was written. That's when the actual vellum is from. That's the it's like a leather kind of made from animal skin or animal intestines. That's what the pages are made out of. And then it's bound in leather, and I'll get to that later. There's something important about that. And then it's written in oak gall ink, which has been retouched in some places. So the entire manuscript, it's 209 pages. It's like leather, and it's old, and it's written in a strange language with no similarities to any other languages at the time or current. There's even, they've tried to match up the letters, and letters don't match up, so it's difficult to decipher if it was a code. There are so many distinct words that don't occur anywhere else in the manuscript. I think there's over 500 of those where there are words that aren't repeated at all. And there are drawings of plants, intricate baths, and astrological maps. And here's like some of the baths and plants. All of it was done with oak gall ink or with cheap pigments. There's been a lot of forensics done on this. So the first section of the book is botany. And the sections they think have been shuffled around. So they're kind of weird, but these are the major sections. It's pages 1 to 120. there's drawings of plants and what we think are descriptions. Again, you can kind of see the words here. They don't make any sense really. And there's one plant per page typically, and then some of the plants are vaguely recognizable, but some are just totally kind of out there. That one in the middle, some kind of flower, but we're not sure. And then also the drawings aren't very detailed. Whoever did it looked like a botanist, but didn't look like they knew a lot of what they were doing. Section 2 is astronomy, and so this is that big picture on the left there is fold out. So those are 6 pages that actually fold out, which would be very difficult to do at the time. And it's super intricate. If you ever look up a PDF, that's page 158, I believe. And they're these super intricate drawings. And they're, again, what we think are celestial drawings. There's a lot of fold out pages in this section, and they're super detailed. There's like writing, there's spaces in the middle of those two. And again, some of them match up to constellations and some of them don't. So we're not really sure what purpose this served. And then section 3 are bats, pardon the nudity. So they're super intricate, interconnected bats and pipes. To me, some of them look a lot like UFOs. This section has a lot more writing. It's actually predominantly writing, and the drawings are more in the margin. So this is kind of on the sides of the pages. And then as you can see, like whatever that strawberry looking thing is, pouring water through all these sieves and stuff that you wouldn't have in the 1400s. And there's a lot of intricate drawings of bats that don't really make sense. So the owners, it is believed that the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II owned it. There's a few descriptions, a few alibis that would corroborate that. And that he had no idea what it was. Even though it was only about 100 years later that he got it, he had no idea what this was about. And then it was lost. We have no idea where it was for like 200 years, 200 to 300 years. They don't know where it was, which adds to the mystery because we don't know who owned it. And then the collector, Wilfred M. Voynich, he's the guy, the black and white. He was just a rare book collector, and he acquired it from some dealer who said he got it in the shipment of books. And then it was from him given to his friend, and then was given to Yale Library in 1969, where it currently resides. And that's just a display case if we keep all the other manuscripts in. So there's a lot of other discoveries. Like I said, there's a crazy amount of forensics that have been done on it. They think it originally had a wooden binding, or a wooden binding was put on it because they found where bugs had started to eat at the vellum that it was made out of, and they think those bugs would have lived in a wooden binding. The pages and sections were shuffled around a bunch, and they think about a third of the book, maybe up to 100 more pages, were actually written, and those are just missing. Some of the writing and pictures were touched up, so you can see here. That's where they redone the A given down here. Somebody went in, they don't know how long ago, and touched up parts of it. And this is the one I thought was really interesting. They scanned the outside of the pages where somebody would have grabbed it to flip, and it was regularly flipped through at some point, like somebody was regularly reading it, which is really interesting because that means it would have served some sort of purpose. And then, oh, geez. See, so, again, we don't really know its use. So the leading theories are it was some jester wrote it as like kind of a joke, like entertainment, because there's a lot of stuff like this at the time, and somebody had just written it kind of as a joke. That a scientist was writing in code, didn't want anybody else to steal their discoveries. There's also a section they think are mixtures for like tonics or recipes, and so that would make people think that maybe they're trying to keep that secret, or like their ideas, they wanted to keep them in code. And the Holy Roman Emperor who owned it actually thought it was a guy named Robert Bacon, and that's a picture from there. A crazy person with visions of bats and plants, like it could have just been a crazy person with access, because again, it wasn't done in the highest quality of material, so it likely wasn't created for some larger, more important purpose. It could be a book from an unknown group of language that just had died out. Again, the pictures are strange, but the strangest part is that we don't know what it was written in. So it could have been a language group that we just don't know about. And then, of course, it could be aliens. There's a 14th century painting that they did like a mock-up of an alien possibly created.
That's not real.
So my interpretation is, unfortunately, we're never going to know because there's no direct evidence. There's no accounts. Obviously, it was written 600 years ago, and there's a huge loss of time between the earliest person we know owned it and the person or the people who own it today. I think personally that it was probably a code, although many linguistics people have looked at it and they said that it's almost indecipherable. There's many codes, many different language groups that they've tried to pin it to, and it just doesn't work. But yeah, here are just some things that were interesting. So here's a closer up of the writing. You know, it's vaguely similar, familiar, but not really. There's a sloth. There's a closer up of the dragon. So it looks kind of like somebody was doodling in there, and they don't know if that was originally or when they went back and retouched it. And I don't know if you can see, here's a plant, and then there's two roots that they drew faces in, which kind of creeped me out. There's like these faces being off the end. But yeah, unfortunately, we're never really gonna know because there's no direct link that we can prove at this time. That's it.
So we can go to Yale and we'll look at this? Is it in their library? Do you have to?
It's in their library, but I'm pretty sure you would have to like contact somebody because it's old and really fragile and kind of falling apart.
So we could dig it up.
I don't think so, unless you have a library card.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. It's really interesting. It's one of the great mysteries.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it kind of creeps me out. Like, look up a PDF and look through all the stuff, especially like the baths. There are clearly women floating on UFOs. One of the drawings up there, you could see it wasn't just like a bath. It was somebody had their arm into something and was like controlling something that fed back. And then it looked like there was fire coming out of the bottom, like they were controlling a hover machine. So,
But they have those guys. Okay. Any questions? All right, nice job. Good. Okay, they're gonna go next? You want it? All right. I lost yours. I found yours. Just give me 5 seconds. Okay, wait, let me move the mouse. Everyone yells at me.
Thank you. I didn't yell at you. All right, so we're doing the Oak Island Money Pit. There's my sloth right there. And that's the actual island in Nova Scotia. So finding the money pit, the first guy who found it was Daniel McGinnis. It's really not known why he went there. Theories of him just fishing, exploring, just sent out there. But then he finds on that island he finds a divot in the ground, and it looks like pretty fresh, and he just starts digging for some reason. He gets two of his friends, Jack Smith and Anthony Vaughn, and they just start digging. And 10 feet,
When did he do this?
1840.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. This mystery has been going on for 200 years. Over it. It's wild. But yeah, they find 10 feet in a wooden plank and clay, and weird. It looks like intentional. And then they dig another 10 feet, so they're in 20 feet. They find another wooden plank, and also some eelgrass and coconut, which this is in Nova Scotia, Canada, and those two things are really tropical, obviously with the coconut. So they dig a bit more. They only get to 27 feet because they only have shovels and they get tired. And then Jack Smith, he starts the Onslow Company, forming in 1803. Oh, sorry, it was 1800s, my fault. And they just start digging even more, and then they find the flagstone, this little thing, which there isn't any like records of it, but it was talked about and they just lost it somehow. And that's those in like markings were just like thought to be a cipher of some sort. And it's and people have theorized that it says 14 feet below 2 million pounds are buried. Which I'll get to why that's not really believable. But they go 10 more feet and then it starts flooding and then it starts like filling up more and more overnight because there's these little flood tunnels, as you can see right here, yeah. And like just man-made materials. It's very weird. And they try to get it out. They try to like use buckets and stuff and just try to get out the water. For 2 years they tried this because they're so infatuated with they think it's like money down there. They just want treasure. And this kind of seems like a theme that happens that people just get infatuated with this money pit. It's it's really they they want money really badly. But after that, they try to focus their efforts on somewhere else. They find 5 box drains and man-made filters, which are like box drains are for ships and such. And just weird man-made materials on this island. Company changes. Someone else buys the island because the Smith people, they're done. They don't want to do this anymore. Probably dead. But the Toro company, there's rumors to be found like 3 golden chains. It's not confirmed nor denied, but it would make sense with some other things. And then the Oak Island Treasure Company takes over and they get a rig drill and they dig 170 feet and then it just stops. Like they can't there's like an impenetrable material down there. So they bring back up the drill and there's like parchment paper on the drill and it says like UI and VI, which was very fascinating to hear about. Yeah, the rig drill. And then but theories, before we get to who actually owns it today. The Knights Templar, the French Crown, pirates, an industry, I think, of sorts. Basically the Knights Templar, they were protecting the Holy Grail. And then they got disbanded because they were so powerful. And the Pope did not want them anymore. So some of them fled to Portugal because Portugal did not mess with the Pope. And the theory is that they hid the Holy Grail under just all this stuff and these tunnels and such. Because there was like it's not these guys specifically, but their sons and such who like just want to hide stuff. It could have also been pirates and privateers. 1 second. Because with Henry, sorry, 1 second. There we go. Yeah. So we got Henry Morgan, who was a famous pirate. He made he went over there a lot, and theories of him just stashing the treasure doesn't really make sense. Why he would do that. And there was also Francis Bacon, where he there's accounts, rumors of him saying he needs to be remembered, and like a lot of his fans think that he buried his treasure here and made it very impractical to get to that treasure, which is also very strange. And we have Franklin Roosevelt, which with King Louis and Marie Antoinette, who Franklin Roosevelt believed in this theory and tried the money pit for a little bit before he became president. Yeah, I think the state felt like it. Which this one had before they sent another person to put all these jewels in Fort Louis' thing, and they just buried all the jewels down here. And yeah, and right? Oh yeah, and then right now, who owns it is Ricky and Marty Langina with and they run a TV show on the History Channel called The Curse of Oak Island. And it's been going for about 10 seasons now. Um, which is insane. And I think the real money they found was just in that show. There's probably not much money buried down there. But they have found a lot of things. They found Footwayne's Whistle, which is down there. Obviously the coconut fire is a stone tablet, which a little picture up there, and then the Spanish scissors, which was interesting. And also brass china. Which comes to the main theory and my personal belief is that it was kind of just a dry dock and like just a porting area for all like people to come to and just drop off their things, and that's why there's so many just miscellaneous things from all over the world. And it probably just got like lost to history. It happens all the time. Or there was also a tar industry before that, which could all be all these contraptions too. There was also like a kiln too that they were doing, but yeah, that was the money pit.
So how's the show?
The show, obviously, it's the best show I've ever watched. I have not watched the show.
You don't think it's a buried treasure?
I don't personally. It would be cool to think about that, but so many people have just gone there and found nothing. And that 40 feet on the stone tablet is not true at all because they've dug way farther than 40 feet. Yes.
Is it like a tourist trap?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
big tourist trap. I went to look on one of the websites and they have just really funny merch. Like I'm a mom who believes in the curse of Oak Island.
Should all go.
Yes, Fiona.
Have you ever seen like any divers?
Not to my knowledge. I do not know personally, sorry.
They did, they actually just want to show. Remember, someone did it a couple years ago and they had someone like a deep sea diver go down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know how deep they've gone now after 10 years of this show?
Probably about like 500 feet, something like that.
It's really deep.
It's really deep.
It's
There's no money down there. There's flood tunnels.
the money's in bad TV. All right.
Yeah,
good job.
exactly.
All right. So Beth, you start Monday. Sound good? Nice job, everybody. These were good presentations. This was fun. A lot of stuff. Yeah, Oak Island is always pretty funny. It's amazing what people want to believe, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
All right, nice job. So have to reevaluate. I think we're gonna have to go to Oak Island.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Thank you for volunteering to be our deep sea diver. What's that? Yeah, they've done. They've done like parrot holes to try to beat it, parallel holes. Yeah. It's crazy. It does seem like it's tremendous stuff. You're doing a flagstone is one, and then disappears and stuff. Yeah. I think it's great.
It said 40 feet down, guys. It was gonna be a bunch of treasure.
All right, nice job, everybody. I'm gonna get ready for next year.
Actually, that's the place coming. Your kid
Just keep coming. Now it's AP US history.
It's never stayed to
Yeah, they got everything around here. Is this your paper?
Yes, that's
Yeah, got it.
That's so much.
Being cast more on.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Because she was like, oh,
Oh, you know, I did see that.